everyone. Welcome. I am Emma Emmer, Executive Director of Strategic Programs here at Bentley, and I am thrilled to be part of this conversation about Bentley's Healthcare MBA, particularly through the lens of our classroom experience. I am joined today by three of our absolutely, truly transformational, amazing faculty members, and I am so excited for them to get to tell you about our Healthcare MBA. Before we do that, I want to just give us a little bit of a roadmap of what we're going to be talking about, as well as just remind us about Zoom features. So first and foremost, we want to know what you're curious about. So we hope you'll use either the chat feature or the Q&A feature to share anything that is on your mind. We want to know your questions, big, small, about what the faculty talk about from their classroom perspective or from the program's perspective broadly. So please utilize one of those two features in order to let us know what you're thinking about. As for a roadmap, we're going to talk a little bit about the Healthcare MBA just to root us in the highest level of what is this program and why would someone do it. And then we're going to hear from two faculty members that teach in the program about their courses, why it's important for folks in their program, and we can also share some of the transformational things that have happened for students by virtue of being a part of these classes. And so with that, I want to start with allowing the folks on the line who are much more interesting than I am to introduce themselves. So I am going to start with Marcus. If you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Marcus Stewart. I'm a professor in the management department and chair of the management department, and I teach the leadership class in the healthcare MBA, Leading Responsibly, GR 603.
Wonderful. And Lynn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Wolf. First and foremost, double Falcon. So got my MBA at Bentley and am proud to now teach in it. My background is a lot of industry coming back into back to school again in my later half, and I am in the Department of Accounting, and I will teach GR 524, Accounting for Decision Making.
Fabulous. And then Iris, I would love for you to introduce yourself, and then I will allow you to also introduce the program, if that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Iris Bergeron. I'm a professor in the management department, but I'm also the MBA director and have been part of this healthcare MBA program since its first design. And I'm really excited to present it to you. So I want to just give you a really broad overview of some of the key features of this program. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions, so please use chat. You can get a hold of us afterwards if you have more questions. We've got information on our website, but just really wanted to give you the highlights so that we can spend more time with Lynn and Marcus and get you really excited about what happens in the classroom, which is where the magic really is. So one of the reasons that we were able to build this amazing program is we have a bench strength in the healthcare industry that is really unique for a business school. Based on our Center for Business and Health and over 90 faculty and staff who are working in this intersection of healthcare and business at really important key aspects of your industry. And so we can leverage that in our classrooms. And we bring that through cases, projects, examples into the coursework that you will be doing. And what that means is that you're not just getting an MBA, you're getting an MBA that is hooked into the world that you live every single day, allowing you to bring those examples into the classroom and also giving you concepts and lessons that you can take back into your workplace immediately. The other key aspect about this, it is a cohort program. So you will be learning not only from faculty who have experience and tap into that healthcare industry, but you're also learning with people who are in your industry and possibly in your organizations. And this is really important because that synergy of learning, that common language, that ability to talk about issues that you're facing every single day with other people who either have a very different perspective on the same issue because they're in a different part of your organization, or they work next to you And that ability to really work through and have conversations with people who are really familiar with your context. And the last thing that I'll talk about is that we designed a program. We know that you are working professionals. You have full careers, you have families, you have other interests in your life. And so we've really designed this so that it is possible for you to complete it through synchronous and asynchronous classes, through everything being, all the classes being virtual, so online, whether they're self-paced or have weekly class meetings. But all of that is tailored to fit your world and allow you to really get through this smoothly. It's not necessarily easily, but to get through it smoothly. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Emma and we'll hear about what actually happens in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another way to learn about this, right? Many of you may have some really specific questions about how the program is structured. As Ira said, use the chat. I'm going to give you ways to get in touch with me after. I see there's a chat already, and I'll take a look at that in just a moment and respond. But I do want you to see inside the classroom because that's where you'll be spending a lot of time in this program. And so to start, Marcus, I would love for you to tell us more about leading responsibly, if you don't mind.
Sure, I will. Thank you. And also, just quickly, are folks able to like raise hands or make contributions or ask questions?
So I don't think folks can actually speak in the meeting.
Okay.
So what we'll
Okay.
we'll be able to do is utilize the chat, or I may be able to take some folks off mute, Marcus, if you need them to, for sure.
Okay. Well, if folks wanted to, that would be fine. So, but I'll operate. I'll just operate as though it's just me. And then if folks are able to or want to ask a question, please do. I'm happy to hear from you and see if we can explore some of these ideas together. So again, I'm Marcus, Professor Stewart, and I teach GR 603, Leading Responsibly. This is the first class in the program. Well, it along with marketing with Professor Ian Cross. But this class meets once a week online for about 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes, something like that. So it's usually like 6:30 to 8:50, something along those lines. So here is kind of an overview of the topics for the class. So we'll talk about leader behavior, values, and ethics, right? Some decision-making items. And then you can see that we dedicate 3 classes to leader learning and development. Learning is really kind of a focal point as much as values and ethics, but learning is kind of an anchor or a foundation of the class. And we view all of the topics in the class through the lens of learning, with learning kind of as a key leader strategy, right? This is how we deal with challenges, changes in strategy, changes in technology, changes in the regulatory environment and so forth, mergers and acquisitions, which many of you are familiar with. Often as leaders, we don't have an answer or have the answer to the question in the moment, but learning, right, is our best bet in terms of navigating and identifying good, positive paths and effective paths forward. We'll talk about cultural diversity and leading teams. Our focus there is on teams and then how diversity plays into enhancing team effectiveness. And that generally comes in situations where you need creativity, innovation, problem solving, when you are dealing with uncertainty, dealing with challenges, a dynamic environment where answers aren't exactly clear. We talk about organizational culture. We'll spend a couple of weeks on culture, assessing our team culture or organization culture. And motivation, I'll talk a little bit more about here this evening. This afternoon. And we have a couple of classes on motivation. And finally, leading change. There also is a semester-long project called the Good Leader Project. In fact, it's half of the semester. But we'll see. Let's talk about motivation just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what happens in the class. So in terms of one of the topics. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that with all the topics, like these are things that we've all experienced, whether you've been in a formal leader role, such as team leader, supervisor, vice president, and so forth, or whether you have just been a conscientious team member, a conscientious employer. All of us have taken on leadership roles and leadership activities at times. Leadership is not limited just to a position or a title, right? Leadership is very much about mindset and behavior, how we conduct ourselves, how we operate. So all of our topics, again, come through that lens. And then in each case, you'll find that, wow, there are a lot of things I assume to be the case or assume to be true. And it's not necessarily that straightforward, right? The more we learn, the more data we gather, the more things we're exposed to, the more insight we gain to find that, wow, my intuition is helpful. It's intuition for a reason, and it's gotten us this far. But once we can get a little more insight into the science, like the work that's been done in these areas, wow, things open up significantly. So let me give an example here with our motivation topic. Again, this is something that we would spend a couple of weeks on in the semester. Not only would we spend 2 weeks on it, but we'd be building on, right, about 8 weeks of course material at that time. So we'd have a very solid foundation of shared concepts, frameworks, theories, and so forth, and experiences to build on together. So with motivation, we typically define motivation as effort. And the reason we talk about motivation as effort, we know that technically it's a psychological state. It's the immediate precursor to taking action on something, or we can define it as drive, right? But for our purposes in organizations and from a leadership perspective, we talk about motivation as effort. The direction, what are the things to which I'm lending effort, the intensity of that effort, how much of my effort am I giving to this, 10%, 20%, 100%, or am I multitasking and so forth? And then the duration, right? How long do I sustain that intensity in this direction? And it's helpful to consider motivation as effort because from a leadership role, we can observe effort. We can measure effort. Effort is something we can capture in a KPI, or we can capture in a performance evaluation. We can give you feedback on your effort, right? I can coach you on your effort. So whereas the psychological element of motivation, my drive, my desire to do something, that can be a little bit abstract. I've wanted to learn a second language for 30 years. Still hasn't happened. So what are we going to say about my motivation, right? But if you ask me, I'm motivated, I'm going to get on it, I'm going to learn to play the violin, but it hasn't happened so far. So we stay focused on effort here. A couple of things, and again, our intuition would tell us, right? Motivation is, again, that psychological element, the immediate determinant of effort level. And if we're not motivated, if we're not giving effort, the job design, the resources available, et cetera, are inconsequential. So we do know folks have to give effort in order to get things done. And generally speaking, if we're giving any level of effort before our maximum, it could be that we're leaving some performance on the table, right? We're not necessarily achieving or generating all that we potentially could. But now a twist, all right? A twist. The link between motivation and performance is in fact can be quite tenuous, right? A lot of things intervene on that relationship between motivation and performance. How skilled are you? If I have someone highly skilled at their job, like Lynn Wolf, Iris Boudreau, Emma Emmer, well, they could probably give 70% of effort toward a task, where someone who's much less skilled would have to give 100% and still couldn't achieve what Emma, Iris, and Lynn can do with just their 70%. So skill matters, right? We think of some of the sports athletic situations. Wow, the 7 foot tall, the super fast person, well, they don't have to work as hard and they still tend to win a disproportionate amount of time compared to those who work really hard, they're diligent, but don't quite have the talent or the skill. Resources, right? I can be very diligent, I can be brilliant and completely focused and dedicated to the task, but if I'm under-resourced, someone, again, who's less diligent, less motivated, may be able to outperform me. A very simple example of that would be having a calculator, right? I'm not a mathematician, but I can knock out some multiplication and division and so forth with a calculator faster than someone who is a mathematician, but is having to work, from memory. So resources matter. And then, of course, important for us from a leadership role, the environment can intervene on the relationship between someone's motivation and their performance on the job. I can be highly motivated, but have a poorly designed job. So I've got to now engage in all kinds of tasks that are superfluous, that are not important to get the job done, that are distractions, that are poorly designed. I might be doing a great job, but the economy is down. I'm doing a great job, but our product, our service just it really isn't in demand right now. So there are external factors that would, that would kind of suppress what looks like my performance level, even though I'm giving my very best. And then, of course, all of us on the call, all of us watching this video right now have probably had experiences with supervisors, right, or leaders who are not great at their job, right? Poor supervision, right? We can be demotivated by supervisors. Supervisors can give us poor direction or kind of lead us in the wrong direction, not intentionally sometimes, but it happens. So again, this relationship between motivation and performance now starts to come into view. So a couple of things here, and on my clock, I've got 6.5 minutes to go. What do we know about motivation? So there are a couple of different forms of motivation. So again, our intuition just says, hey, motivation, how hard do I work at something? And if I were to ask what motivates people, again, intuition would probably lead us to money, rewards, promotions, applause, right? Recognition. These motivators are called extrinsic motivators. And we will dig in with some resources, some videos, a book chapter, some articles that let us know that there are some great things about extrinsic motivation, right? Or extrinsic motivators. Extrinsic motivators really are effective at focusing us on things, right? If someone says, look, you get a bonus, you get a raise if you do these activities, that gets our attention immediately to those activities. And we tend to stop doing the other things that don't lead us so directly to those rewards. So there are some great benefits when things are not so desirable, the gritty work, the grunt work, and so forth, the hard things to do that aren't so great. Well, extrinsic reward, a little more money for that, right? This lines you up for a promotion. This puts you in position to succeed. Okay, now I'm more willing to engage in that activity. Where left to my own devices, I might avoid it, again, because it's displeasurable, perhaps. I mean, there are some drawbacks, right? Unintended consequences for extrinsic rewards like money. When employees start to expect money in exchange for effort, well, that can undermine our ability to self-regulate. Suddenly, I'm not doing things unless I get paid. Right? Some of us are familiar with that with our kids, or those of us that teach, Iris and Lynn, we've seen it in class. Well, if there's no grade on that, I'm not going to do it. Why am I going to read that? Why would I write that? Right? So there can be some drawbacks to using extrinsic motivators like money and the promise of recognition or promotion as motivators. Right? They can undermine people's motivation to engage in activities. Right? I'm interested in this topic, but if you're not going to give me any candy, you're not going to give me any money as a reward, I'm not going to engage in it. So on the other hand, we have this aspect of motivation or form of motivation called intrinsic motivation. This is the internal drive. This motivation is derived from the satisfaction we get in engaging in activity. This is very much a function of the experience of achievement, the experience of growth and learning, right? So our innate growth needs, our innate need for mastery, right? And autonomy, right? Our need for autonomy. These are autonomy, mastery, growth. These are needs that underpin our intrinsic motivation. So we read books because we enjoy them. We run the mile because we enjoy. We hike, we paint, we're in our garden because it brings us joy, and we're learning, and we can see our improvement when I do my scales on the piano in the morning, I'm hearing my improvement. I can play increasingly sophisticated tunes and songs. So intrinsic motivation we tend to be at our highest level of motivation when we're highest level of performance when we're intrinsically motivated. right? When we're extrinsically motivated, when we're motivated by money, we do enough to get the money and then we stop. There's no incentive to do more. Again, Lynn and Iris can attest, when students do enough to get the A or get the grade they're pursuing, then they stop. Right? They don't do an extra problem set. They don't seek another source to read and so forth, generally speaking. I did what I need to get the A. I did what I need to get the paycheck. You said 15 minutes. You said 2 hours. I did it and I stopped. Whereas if I'm intrinsically motivated, I continue. So intrinsic motivation helps to support learning, creativity, right? Innovation, right? Problem solving. So intrinsic motivation can have some significant advantages. Now, one more twist for us, and we'll call it a day here. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation don't necessarily go together very well. When you offer money to someone to do something that they love to do on their own, it can undermine that intrinsic motivation. I've got this picture. If you're old enough, like myself, you remember Allen Iverson here as a basketball player for the Philadelphia 76ers, Georgetown Hoyas before that. This is a clip from YouTube where he has this rant about practice. Practice? We're talking about practice, right? This is an example of someone who has a $70 million, $150 million contract to play a game that he loves the game of basketball, grew up his entire life playing. Matter of fact, he accepted consequences, punishment, in order to play the game. Allen, if you don't go to school today, you're gonna blah blah blah. Where's Allen? He's not in school. He's at the park playing basketball. Allen's playing basketball in the rain, in the snow. But now, with the $70 million contract, doesn't want to practice in pristine conditions, right? And we find this study's been done with all age groups, kindergarten to the elderly. You monitor how many puzzles someone does in a typical month. I do 4, Iris does 5, Emma does 2. And you start offering us money for it, our puzzle productivity goes through the roof. But then when you take that money away, take the incentive away, we don't go back to doing 4 and 2 and 5 puzzles anymore. We do 0. And that 0 holds for a while until we eventually start to regain our intrinsic motivation. So I've got 30 seconds left. So these are some of the materials that go along with this class session. And so where we arrive is this job characteristics model is the most prominent model of intrinsic motivation at work that we have, right? This is the one. And we can see that there are these elements on the side here: task variety, the variety of things one does in their job; task identity, being able to bring something from start to finish; task significance, the task having importance to what happens at on the job; and then autonomy and feedback. Right. These are the things that we can put in place and we can emphasize to support intrinsic motivation on the job. So I'm going to leave it there, but that's kind of just getting us started on the topic of motivation in GR 603. I'm 30 seconds over and I'm sorry, but I apologize.
You nailed it, Marcus.
Right.
Don't even. Marcus, thank you so much for giving us both the overview of what this course covers, but also a flavor of the kinds of things you're going to be thinking about in that Leading Responsibly class. As Marcus said, it's one of the first courses you take as part of the program. I think a lot of our students, and Iris can attest to this, we've asked students on student panels, hey, what classes have been most meaningful in your time? And spoiler alert, the answers are actually almost to a T, leading responsibly and accounting for decision making, which is why these two people are here. But the reason why leading responsibly, I think, is so meaningful is it forms a really important base for the students as they consider kind of why they're in this program, what are they going to do, what motivates them, how can they motivate teams. So Marcus, thanks for giving us that insight today. And I know you've been incredibly impactful on the students that have been in the program so far. So thank you for that. And
I think transformational was the term
that's right. I meant transformational. Yes. With that, we're going to take a hard left turn. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Iris. Yes, the best in the business, Lynn Wolf. Thank you.
And we're going to talk about accounting. And so, Lynn, I'd love for you to give us a little insight into your course too.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to take control here. I've got to get my presentation up. We accountants, right? Take control. Can you see a slideshow?
Beautiful. Sure does.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me get rid of this part here. All right, that's good. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Bentley University, of course, through this whole seminar, the Healthcare MBA, and I'm going to talk a little bit about GR 524, Accounting for Decision Making. Let me flip here. You heard a little intro about me, but this is me. That's Flex our Falcon, not one of the cohort members, but you will see him from time to time. I just want to tell you that, in my background, I did go through the MBA program. It took me a long time doing it part-time, and this program is great because you will get kind of to and through it and still get all, stay focused and get it going. But my background is in a bunch of different areas in the financial and accounting world. And what I do is I bring that back here and try to combine what do I see in the real world, what do I see in the books and that, and how things I've learned out there can help you when you go back out. I teach undergrads, I teach graduates, and to tie myself into this, I've been a lifelong patient in the healthcare field, so I've learned a lot through parents who are sick and all of that, all of those things that go on, and all that you do in the healthcare field is, you are my heroes. So this is my time to give back to you and help you in my world. So a lot of people are like, well, why accounting? Why GR 524? We accountants like our saying, accounting is the language of business. Basically, it's going to help you see full circle what's going on in your organization. You wouldn't believe how much information we see and how we can use that to affect change for everyone who's involved in the business. That includes the patients in a hospital. That includes our fellow coworkers and being able to fund things, being able to offer goods and services, different types of remedies to do research and trials, all of that. So what we find is if you have this knowledge, you can make a difference, whether you're the accountant itself or somebody we arm with these tools to be able to bring that back into your role, which is the goal of here. I'm not making you all CPAs. I'm actually trying to give you enough tools to then apply to your jobs to be able to understand why there might be a budget, why there might be this, and how do you learn how to use that to be able to still bring your compelling reasons and stuff like that along with the accounting and finance to maybe change a decision that might have been it's not in the budget, right? So you learn how that all works. So you can make a difference, and it starts by reviewing in the past, seeing what happened in the past, what numbers, how they laid, how much things cost, and then using that information to change the future with decision making. So it helps you make a difference. It helps the organization succeed in its purpose and mission. Whether you're a for-profit company that we see in some of the commercial worlds, whether you're a nonprofit, whatever your mission is, and the mission in healthcare is to make people better and have the funds and the capabilities to do that and constantly innovate and hear your customers and your patients. And this is how you can one sideline to make that happen. What we do in GR 524 is we provide you those tools to make those impactful decisions, teaching you, I call it enough to be dangerous, to understand why the numbers are doing what they do. And maybe you can understand some reasons and rationales for why some decisions are made in management and how you can help change that. So it connects the business, it connects the operations, and it allows the business to be more effective. And as an added bonus, it may help you at work, but it's also going to help you in your personal decision making, understanding how to create budgets for yourself or financing. How do I get that first house? How do I save for my retirement? All those things can start stemming from the financial and accounting capabilities that you're getting. From a high level view, so flying in from Falcon level, what we do in the course is we provide you a slew of accounting tools. We teach you how to read financial statements, very similar to when you start to read medical results of your patients or any other tools that you have in research and that. It's learning what is going on in those numbers. How do they react? How do they behave? And we take it a little further to say, give you an appreciation how those numbers become with a transaction one at a time. One thing that happens in the business is a transaction. We lump all those together. We get financial statements. The financial statements tell what's going on in the business either at a point in time, like what do we have today? What's our inventory of all the good stuff and the bills that we have? Accompanied with some things that tell us what were our performance in the period. We call those income statements. So how did we do? Did we bring in more in revenues, things that the people, the customers pay us for, than we had in expenses? How do we make sure our business is running effectively and efficiently? We do things called budgets and forecasts. So we talk a little bit about that and how we take those actual numbers and plan for the future, and then see, well, gee, we need a little bit more money. If we're not going to get it from revenues, we might have to fundraise. We might have to, get donors and stuff like that, especially if you want to add a wing to the hospital or enhancements to the cardiac unit. How do we do that in this class? We use a combination of videos. At this current point, we have a lot of videos that will give you some of the contents. Our textbook has some, but I provide a lot of those videos in that, and practice problems and solutions to work. And we'll do some case examples and problem sets to kind of work them through. Currently, the class is an async, which I also provide synchronous support. We have 4 scheduled optional classes, which I do record. So if someone wants to go all synchronous, they can. If they want to come, and I have a good number of students who come every week to the optional classes. And if they can't for work commitments or whatever, then I put the recordings out. So it seems we keep everybody at equal pace. My motto is I leave no falcon behind. So you will always have my support. I talk to students regularly. Office hours are open whenever you need help, and I'm available and you're available. We make it happen. So I call it full Falcon support on course material and beyond. So I enjoy it. The cohort is one of my favorite classes to teach, and I teach it every spring. So the spring semester just ended, a 10-week course, and I just am so honored and privileged to be able to work with all of you. And having that work experience adds another flavor to the course. So we work back and forth. When we are doing this, we have some outcomes that come from the course. So what we'll do is I have a little tool chest for you, figuratively, and in that tool chest, we are putting all kinds of things. How to read financial statements. What all those things mean? What do those accounts mean on the financial statements? What are they doing? There's the good stuff, the assets, there's the bills, the liabilities, and then the equity, and what are we carrying forward on a long-term basis. We'll recognize a lot of these things and use this data again to talk about decision making, and we also start to learn which tool we're going to use. Sometimes we need a hammer to hang something up. Sometimes we need a level to make sure the picture's straight, right? Which business tool do you use at each particular one in time? And you may use more than one at a time. Depends on what you're looking at in the situation. So you start developing that kind of sense. It's called a gut feel. So you'll take that tool. What should I use this hammer for? Should I use it to put in glass? Maybe not. Am I going to use it to hammer in a nail? Maybe so. And you'll kind of do that, and you'll start to take that to understand the business, understand what's around you, the internal environment that you're working at, the external environment of maybe the healthcare field in general. And when you get all that information, I always say the accounting tail doesn't wag the dog. It's bits of information, it's qualitative information, but then we talk about how you would use qualitative information. What is really in the best interest? Just because I save $1 may not be the right answer. But then again, if I save $1 in one spot, I might be able to use that for another place. So we try to make the best decision with all the information we have available. As always, we also try to be agile and reactive. As we all know, and comes back to a lot of this in business when we talk about it, the COVID period was a period of time of crazy change. We went from one way of operating to another immediately to make it happen, and the healthcare field really felt the brunt of all of this. But all businesses, restaurants had to repivot and make sure what happened. So being able to take that information and be able to steer the ship around the iceberg, or whatever it is that you need to kind of get through to continue to provide those goods and services. So what I found in my career is having this bit of knowledge has allowed me to be on the management teams providing that financial insight. But if you're not going to be a career accountant, it's okay, because it's going to give you a little more appreciation as to what goes on. So how do we do this? Getting into the nuts and bolts of the course. It is done 1 day a week. I think this semester we had done it on a Wednesday night. Optional synchronous classes were from 6:30 to 8, and I timed the open office hours for the same time. Had a kind of a pull together of the week's activities of some of the concepts. We would practice some problems. I would answer any questions, especially with some of the assignments coming up, because people are new to Excel, people are new to accounting. You're not going to go it alone. The same way that you treat your patients is the way I'm going to treat you, and make sure that you have the knowledge and that every step of the way. So some people come in a little nervous about accounting and it's the unknown, but I would be nervous if I had to put an IV in someone. So, and probably so would you, until I had that training and that practice. So it's all practice, it's all exposure. So we'll talk about how the financials are built with financial accounting. That's kind of the view of the financial statements for external users. And then we will actually look at managerial accounting, some of those decisions that we're making. So should we make or buy a product, keep or drop a product? What should we do with the budget? How do we get more money to cover that? This is one of our cohorts. I just wanted to highlight cohort 3 for a minute. Both Marcus Stewart and I had met them for dinner a couple of years ago. I am proud to say they're graduating in May, so I look forward to seeing them at commencement. But I wanted to do a quick read of a student's. Forgive me, I'm looking because I have different monitors. Bring it over so I can see it and make it for older eyes. I want to read what one of the assignments that we have is to, I might have to read it on paper, so hold on for 1 second. Let's see. Okay. So one student wrote this. We do a reflection narrative because I really want to know continuously how this class is helping you all in your roles and jobs. So I'm going to read this. This is from not anyone in the picture, but somebody who wrote this up in one of the cohorts. So they say this: as a nurse leader, I have dedicated my career to improving patient outcomes, fostering teamwork, and ensuring the delivery of high-quality patient and family care. As a nurse leader, I am positioned to understand the needs of patients, staff, and my healthcare organization. However, today's healthcare landscape requires more than clinical expertise. There is a need for leaders to bridge the gap between clinical expertise and business awareness. Financial constraints, regulatory changes, and the need for operational efficiency requires leaders who can think strategically and manage resources efficiently. Taking this accounting class will provide me with the tools to analyze financial statements and provide and develop strategic plans and implement innovative solutions to address challenges to patient outcomes. When I started this accounting course, I'll admit it, I was nervous. Numbers, ledgers, financial statements, none of it felt like familiar territory for someone whose world has always been centered on people, care, and clinical decision making. I worried I'd be over my head and that the material wouldn't fit on how I think and work as a nurse. But I'm so glad I took the leap. Learning accounting for the first time was a leap into unfamiliar territory, and I know without a doubt that the only reason I was able to grow, learn, and truly understand the material was because Professor Wolf. Her presence made all the difference from day one. She created a safety net woven with patience, clarity, and a general desire to see each of us succeed. I took the leap, and she met me there. What I learned in the class is invaluable. Learning accounting didn't just teach me how to read financial statements or understand the flow of money through an organization. It taught me how healthcare truly functions behind the scenes. I now understand how resources are allocated, how costs and revenues shape decision-making, and why financial stewardship is essential to high-quality patient care. Most importantly, the course taught me how to grow personally. I learned to sit with discomfort, to ask questions without shame, and to trust that I can master new skills even when they feel far from outside my comfort zone. That confidence alone will make me a stronger and more confident alone will make me a stronger contributor to the nursing profession. As nurses, we often focus on the clinical and relational aspects of care, but this course reminded me that our impact is even greater when we understand the systems that support our work. With this new knowledge, I can be a better advocate for my patients, my colleagues, and the environments we work in. I can participate more fully in conversations about budget, staffing, resource allocation, and strategic planning, conversations that directly influence the quality and equity of care. Taking accounting for the first time stretched me, challenged me, and ultimately expanded my sense of what it takes to be a nurse leader. I am grateful for the experience, and I know the skills I gained will continue to shape my growth and the ability to contribute meaningfully to the profession. As a nurse leader, I want to advance my career and make a more meaningful impact in nursing. I am confident that accounting will serve as a catalyst for both professional and personal growth, empowering me to achieve my full potential as a nurse leader. So I just want to say that warmed my heart more than anyone. And I took a few minutes over, but I wanted you to hear from an actual student in the cohort, what they said, how they felt, and know that, all of us in the cohort, including myself, are here to help you become the best versions of yourselves to be able to help others in your field. Thank you,
Lynn,
and I will
I
answer any
love that.
questions.
I absolutely love that you shared that because Iris and I have heard very similar feedback about this course. There's often this kind of interesting tension of, hey, I was really worried about this. And then this transformed me, not just in my day-to-day work. And many people have pointed to us. We had a site manager or site director share with us, hey, I used to sit in my weekly finance meeting. I let other people make those decisions. I let it go over my head. Now I'm an active participant, and that allows me to do a better job running my site. So, yes, but there's a lot of people that point to this course as really transforming them as people too. I love that kind of feedback about asking questions, being comfortable learning something new. And I know Iris, and I'm curious if you have a reaction to this. In general, when you and I talk about MBAs overall, that's a lot of the learning also. There's very tangible learning, and then there's learning about how to be a new kind of professional. And that kind of comment so perfectly encapsulated all the dimensions of learning that our students tend to have in this program.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. And I love that you shared that, Lynn, because it does echo what we've heard, but it also points to the fact that, when you engage in a comprehensive degree program like the MBA that truly does give you a view of the entire organization, there's going to be areas where you are not as familiar and that are going to stretch your thinking, stretch your learning. It's exactly like walking through a new building and not really knowing all components of it, right? And so it does develop you more holistically. There will be courses where it's completely in your swim lane, in your comfort zone, and others where you walk in thinking, oh God, I don't know about this. And so often we've heard, Lynn, that the accounting course is the one where they're standing at the threshold going, oh my, really don't know. And you get them through it fabulously every time so that they really feel confident, which is
Thank
great.
you. Thank
Thousand
you.
percent. So I'm going to take a moment, if folks are willing, to talk a little bit about how to apply to this program, what it means to join this cohort, because I do think Marcus and Lynn gave us a great insight into what you learn, how you learn, what the community is like. And so I certainly want to give people knowledge of how to join it. I also do just want to put in a plug for the Q&A. If people have questions, please utilize it. But you're going to also receive, as part of this, information about how to contact me for your individual questions. So the first thing I'm just going to share is our application, the TLDR of our application is I want to learn as much about you as an individual through this application while making it as kind of not onerous as humanly possible on you. And so this kind of personal experience that you have, Lynn's describing personally supporting every Falcon through. Iris is talking about kind of you as an individual in this program. I want to know you as an individual. I want to know your goals, and I want to make sure that we're supporting you in getting to this program if it's of interest to you. I will say there's a number of people on the line that I've gotten the chance to talk to already. I hope you all feel that way, and I hope this application process reflects that as well. Just going to call out a couple of things on here. The first is a lot of folks on the line or in previous cohorts have asked me two main things. One, Emma, do I have to go take my GMAT or GRE? The answer is absolutely not. If you have already taken it and you're proud of your score, I'd love to see it to celebrate you. If, however, you have not done that, In no way do I think you should go off and do that as part of this application, unless you feel like it really will represent you differently than the kind of holistic application you can put together. But I would argue that is rarely, rarely the case. So totally optional, really optional. I often get the question, but like, Emma, is it actually optional? Yes, truly, truly optional. The other thing, folks have said to me, very famously, someone in the current first year of their cohort said to me, Emma, are you sure you want my transcript? It has cobwebs all over it, meaning I've not been in the classroom for a very long time. The answer is yes. I still want to see your transcript because it gives me an understanding of your academic preparation. However, we very much recognize that 21, 22-year-old you may be very different than 35-year-old you. The way we learn now is super different than the way you maybe learned as an undergraduate or in a first master's or something like that. I just need to know what your academic preparation is, and we take very much into account your work preparation. We take into account your recommendation that tells us about who you are as a professional. Those things are wildly important in how you're going to show up in the classroom, and equally important, if not more so. We just need that piece of information. But please know, if you feel as though it is not the best representative of you in this moment, we get it completely. I do want to just talk about a couple of key upcoming dates. So our application deadline is coming up in 2 weeks. We have a May 1st application deadline. However, if you come to me and you send me an email and you say, Emma, I really need until May 15th, I'm so sorry. No problem. In fact, there's someone on the line who I literally had that conversation with recently. We are here to support you as working professionals. As Iris said, this program is structured to support you in that way. Same with the application process. Just let me know. And that way I can make sure that you're getting the time that you need. But we'd love to see your application by May 1st. If you do that, we'll turn around a decision to you promptly. Classes would begin for this cohort in late August then. As Iris said, this is a cohorted program. That means you take all of your courses with the same group of people. Lynn showed a beautiful photo of one of the cohorts. You maybe saw also in the slideshow, there is a great picture of our first graduating cohort. So you make these really deep bonds with folks as you go through the program. You take 2 courses every semester, except for your final semester where you take 1. And so that would begin in late August. You can see my email address at the bottom of this screen. Many of you have probably gotten, 3 separate emails from me already, so you may have it in your inbox, but please do reach out to me with any and all questions that you have. The very last thing I'm going to say is for folks that work at Beth Israel Lahey Health or at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Bentley has a special partnership with those 2 organizations that gives you a special discount on our program. That information should be available to you, but if you have any questions about it and you want to understand what that looks like, please reach out to me and I would be happy to give you that information. Now with that, I see some questions in the Q&A. So the first question is, what is the time commitment and duration of the MBA? And what is the difference between an MBA and a master's in health administration? So I'm going to take the first question for sure, which is, as I mentioned, this program is a cohorted program. You will go through it with the same group of people. You will take 2 courses a semester for 8 semesters, which is just under 3 calendar years. It basically ends up being a fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, summer, fall, spring with us here at Bentley. As Iris pointed to, and Lynn actually really importantly pointed out, courses are all online. Some, like Marcus's course, are taught with a live weekly session that is required. Others are taught what we call asynchronously, but is really self-paced. So it's online, you're going to do modules, you're going to have required work, but you could choose to do that in the evening during your lunch hour. You don't have to log in at any given time. Some of those classes have optional sessions like Lynn was describing. So that's going to be, from a time commitment perspective, we generally expect folks to take something like 10 to 12 hours per week per course, inclusive of class time. So that's reading, practice problems, watching modules, being in class. And so that is the expectation over the course of those just under 3 years. For the difference between an MBA and Master's in Health Administration, Iris, I'm curious if you would want to take that, at least to describe what an MBA is.
Sure. Typically, the difference between a master's, which is Master's of Health Administration, and an MBA, for one, is the length of the program. Masters tend to be shorter. They're very targeted towards specific things. So, health administration would be the MHA focus. An MBA is a broader degree. It is what we call a generalist degree. You learn how all aspects of the organization function, and then regardless of your position, your hierarchy, or your functional area within the organization, how do you impact positive change? This MBA is tailored to the healthcare industry, so it is put into that context, but it is the broader degree of how the entire organization functions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think another thing, Iris, that we often are asked is like, okay, well, what's a healthcare MBA as compared to an MBA? And one of the things we talk a lot about is that this program is an MBA fundamentally. When you learn accounting with Lynn, you can kind of use that toolkit in the healthcare sector, but you also could go and use it in a totally different sector. And that's true, as Marcus was describing, motivation. However, our program integrates healthcare examples and uses your healthcare community to ensure that you're easily connecting the dots between those tools and your actual organization. And so I think the importance here is that there are some folks in this program that are like, healthcare or bust, I'm going to be here forever. This program allows you to really deeply apply what you're learning into what you're interested in. We have other people in the program that say, I like healthcare right now, but I might want to transition. Great. Accounting is the same everywhere. So what you learn in the classroom, you're still going to be able to use as language else in other organizations. And so I think it adds to the kind of depth and breadth, which is wonderful. We have another question about if you are at one of those organizations, BILH or DFCI, that have an employer partnership with us, what happens if you no longer work in that organization? So the answer to that is you can continue in the program. However, you will lose your automatic discount that you receive as part of the program. And so if anyone has specific questions about that, I'd urge you to reach out to me, emmer@bentley.edu. And I'm certainly happy to walk you through kind of the literal nuts and bolts of what happens. Curious if